Mr. President, later today, the Senate will vote on the motion to proceed to legislation known as the Laken Riley Act. The loss of a child is something no parent should have to endure. My thoughts and prayers are with the family of Laken Riley, by every measure an outstanding young woman. We should do everything possible to make sure this type of tragedy never occurs again. But I do have concerns about some of the language in this legislation. Let me give you an example. This bill would mandate immigration detention for an undocumented immigrant if they are arrested for shoplifting, even if they're never charged or convicted for that offense. Most people, having paid a little attention to law enforcement review, television, movies, know the process. You steal a candy bar, hand on the shoulder, the clerk says, wait a minute, what are you doing here? Next thing you know, a policeman's called in, and he arrests you for shoplifting. They then take you in and charge you with that crime. You make a plea, guilty or not guilty, and ultimately it's resolved by a trial of some nature. That's the ordinary process. The question is whether or not someone should be deported at the very first time that the hand reaches your shoulder with your candy bar in hand, but no charge of any crime. That is what this bill does. That's going a little bit too far as I'm personally concerned. This bill would mandate immigrant detention for an undocumented immigrant if they're arrested for shoplifting, not convicted, even if they're never charged or convicted. Current law requires mandatory detention of individuals with serious criminal convictions by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, better known as ICE. This has been on the books for a long time. It's the right thing to do. I don't want dangerous people coming into this country, and I don't want anyone who's dangerous and is undocumented to stay in this country, period. Existing law gives ICE discretion to retain undocumented immigrants on a case-by-case basis. ICE assesses each case individually, so the agency's limited resources are used effectively to protect national security and public safety. This bill, as currently written, would eliminate ICE's discretion to prioritize detention and deportation of dangerous individuals. Instead, it requires ICE to treat a child arrested for shoplifting candy the same as an adult convicted of child abuse. Why? In practice, this would overwhelm ICE detention facilities and make America less safe. Let me tell you some of the numbers of this, what appears to be a simple bill. ICE told my office that this legislation would require them to detain more than 65,000 immigrants. But Congress has only provided ICE with funding to detain 42,000, and the agency is already holding nearly that many. So if this legislation becomes law, ICE would be forced to release tens of thousands of other immigrants who were detained under ICE's current policies, which prioritize those who pose a threat to public safety. This bill would also grant state attorneys general the standing to sue if a state disagrees with many unrelated decisions made by federal immigration authorities. It would require federal courts to prioritize these cases to the greatest extent possible. This would rob federal judges of the ability to control their courtrooms and grind their dockets to a halt. These standing provisions would also undermine the supremacy of the federal government over immigration and border security, established by our Constitution. They could also dramatically reduce legal immigration into our country because the way it's drafted, the Department of State under any administration could be blocked from issuing visas to nationals from a certain country, like India or China. Perhaps some of my colleagues think they're pretty good policy goals, but they have nothing to do with the tragic murder of this young woman. If we are going to consider this bill, we must have a chance to offer amendments to fix a few of these problems and ensure the bill would accomplish its goal. Now, Mr. President, this week the Senate Judiciary Committee will hold a confirmation hearing for Pam Bondi, President-elect Trump's choice for Attorney General. I appreciated meeting with Ms. Bondi last week to discuss issues of great importance to the American people. She's impressive. She's clearly a professional and a trusted attorney and has an amazing background. I appreciated meeting with her. The significance of the Attorney General cannot be overstated. The Department of Justice is responsible for safeguarding civil rights and liberties, promoting public safety, ensuring economic opportunity and fairness. An independent Attorney General is essential. The Justice Department leader must be loyal to the Constitution above all else, including the President. But during his first term, then President Trump used Department of Justice as his personal attorneys. He tried to thwart the Mueller investigation, protect political allies, and even overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Unfortunately, Mr. Trump has pledged that during his second term, he will weaponize the Justice Department to seek revenge on his political enemies. The President-elect has made it clear that he values one thing above all else in the Attorney General: loyalty. I have no reason to believe President-elect Trump has changed his litmus test for Attorney General or his views on how the Justice Department should operate. In fact, I fear he found someone who can pass this loyalty test. We'll see at the hearing. The obvious concern with Ms. Bondi is whether she will follow the bipartisan tradition of the post-Watergate era and oversee an independent Department of Justice that upholds the rule of law. Ms. Bondi is one of 4 personal lawyers to President-elect Trump who he's already selected for Department of Justice positions. She was a leader in an effort to overturn the 2020 election. She has echoed the president's calls for prosecuting his political opponents, and she has a troubling history of unflinching loyalty to the president-elect. In addition, she has a record of hostility to fundamental civil rights, including reproductive rights, voting rights, and LGBTQ rights. Every president has the right to nominate individuals to serve in key cabinet positions. However, the Senate has a constitutional duty to provide advice and consent on these nominations. This week's hearing will provide an opportunity to learn more about her nomination, and her vision. The American people deserve an Attorney General who will protect their fundamental rights, demonstrate independence and integrity, and remain faithful to the Constitution, the country, and the rule of law. Mr. President, I yield the floor.